Before we get into today's episode, just a quick reminder. This show is built on open conversation, different perspectives, and sometimes uncomfortable truths. The opinions you're about to hear come from a range of viewpoints, and not everyone is going to agree, and that's the point. We're not here to tell you what to think. We're here to make you think. Some of today's discussion touches on real frustrations people are feeling across the country: financial pressure, cultural tension, and the sense that everyday Americans are being pushed to their limits. So if you're listening, take it in, think critically, and, as always, decide for yourself where you stand.
You can feel it right now, everywhere you go. It's in the way people talk, the way they react, the way they're just a little quicker to snap than they used to be. It's at the gas pump when you're watching the numbers climb faster than your paycheck ever will. It's in the grocery store when you grab the same things you always do, but somehow the total keeps getting higher while the bags keep getting lighter. And it's not just frustration anymore, it's something deeper, something that's been building for a long time. For years, people have been told to be patient. It'll get better. The economy is strong. This is temporary. But for the working class, the people actually out there grinding every day, it doesn't feel temporary. It feels like a constant squeeze. Like no matter how hard you work, how many hours you put in, you're still falling behind while someone somewhere is telling you everything is fine. And that disconnect, that's where the real tension starts. Because this isn't just about money anymore. It's about respect. It's about feeling like the system you're playing by doesn't actually work for you, that the rules are different depending on who you are, that the people making decisions aren't living in the same reality as the people dealing with the consequences of those decisions. And when that gap gets too wide, people don't just get frustrated, they start pushing back. And that's where we are right now. Not just frustrated, not just tired, but at a point where more and more Americans are starting to ask a dangerous question. What happens when people who feel like they've got nothing left to lose decide they're done playing nice? All right, let's bring in the crew. Because if there's one thing this show does well, it's take real-world frustration and turn it into a conversation that's either going to make you think or make you laugh, or depending on who you are, probably both at the same time. First up, Brian is here bringing that I've had enough and I'm not even pretending to be polite about it anymore energy. If there's a pressure valve somewhere in this country, Brian's already kicked it open, ripped it off the wall, and is currently explaining why it should have never been installed in the first place. Rachel's with us tonight, keeping things grounded, balanced, and probably the only one at this table who can take a heated argument and turn it into something that actually makes sense. She's the voice that reminds us there's a difference between frustration and chaos, even if the line between the two is getting thinner by the day. Daniel's here, connecting dots that may or may not exist, but somehow always manages to make you pause and go, all right, hold on. What if he's not completely wrong? He's been watching this slow build for a while, and if there's a bigger system behind all of it, you already know he's about to lay it out. And of course, Skylar is with us, ready to challenge just about everything that's about to be said, push back on the narrative, and remind us that frustration doesn't automatically equal being right. Whether you agree with her or not, she's going to make sure this doesn't turn into an echo chamber. And me, I'll be right here in the middle of it, calling it like I see it, asking the questions that need to be asked, and probably stirring the pot just enough to keep this thing moving. So let's get right into it. Because this isn't one of those topics you can ease into. You can feel this one everywhere right now. It's not just headlines. It's not just politics. It's real life. It's people working longer hours, picking up extra shifts, cutting back where they can, and somehow still feeling like they're falling behind. It's the guy putting in 50 to 60 hours a week and still stressing about bills. It's families walking into a grocery store and having to make choices they didn't have to make just a few years ago. It's not theoretical. It's happening, and people are noticing. And what's making it worse isn't just the pressure, it's the disconnect. Because at the same time, people are feeling squeezed. They're being told everything is fine, that the economy is strong, that things are improving, that this is just part of the cycle. But when your reality doesn't match what you're being told, that's where frustration turns into something else. That's where people start feeling ignored, or worse, lied to. And once that trust starts to break down, it doesn't just affect how people see the economy. It affects how they see everything. Because now it's not just about money, it's about fairness. It's about whether the system is actually working the way it's supposed to, or if it's tilted in a way that keeps the same people winning while everyone else just tries to keep up. And when enough people start feeling like the game is rigged, history shows us they don't just sit quietly forever. They start pushing back, sometimes in small ways, sometimes in ways that change everything. So here's the question I want to start with tonight, because I think this is where it really matters. At what point does everyday frustration turn into real pushback? And are we getting dangerously close to that line right now?
I think we're already closer to that line than people want to admit, but I don't think it looks the way most people expect it to look. When people hear pushback, they picture something loud or dramatic. But what I'm seeing more of right now is quiet strain. It's people working more and getting less. It's families adjusting their lives in ways they never thought they'd have to. And it's this constant mental weight of trying to stay ahead in a system that feels like it's slowly shifting against them. That kind of pressure doesn't always explode right away. It builds, it settles in, and it changes how people see everything around them. And I think the bigger issue isn't just the financial side, it's the emotional disconnect. When people feel like their reality isn't being acknowledged, when they feel like their struggles are being minimized or explained away, that's when frustration starts to turn into something deeper. It's not just things are expensive, it's why does it feel like nobody in charge actually understands what this is doing to people? And once that trust starts to erode, it doesn't just stay contained to one issue, it spreads. It affects how people view leadership, institutions, and even each other. So, yeah, I think we're close. But I don't think people are done playing nice yet. I think right now, they're just reaching a point where they're starting to question everything.
Yeah. And that's the part right there that I think hits the hardest. It's not loud yet, it's not explosive, it's quiet. And honestly, that might be more concerning because when people are loud, at least you know where things stand. But when it's that slow build, that quiet frustration, that I'm just going to deal with it mentality stacking up day after day, that's where things start to shift under the surface. That's where attitudes change, patience wears thin, and people start looking at the world a little differently than they used to. And I'll be honest, I don't think people feel heard right now. I think a lot of folks feel like they're being talked at, not talked to, like their reality is being explained away instead of understood. And when that keeps happening over and over again, it stops being about one issue. It becomes this bigger feeling that the people making decisions aren't living in the same world as everyone else. And that's dangerous territory because once people stop trusting the system, they stop respecting it too. And history doesn't exactly show that ending quietly. So, Brian, let me bring you in here because I know you've got a strong take on this. Do you think this is just frustration like we've seen before? Or are we actually getting to a point where people are done sitting back and they're ready to push back in a real way?
No, this isn't the same kind of frustration we've seen before. This is different, and people can feel it. For years, folks have been grinding, doing what they're supposed to do, working hard, paying bills, trying to build something. And now it feels like no matter how much you do, it's never enough. Prices keep going up, expectations keep going up, but somehow the reward for all that effort keeps shrinking. And what really gets people fired up isn't just the pressure, it's being told everything is fine while they're living the exact opposite. That's not just frustrating. That's insulting. People aren't stupid. They know when something doesn't add up. And I think we're past the point of people just quietly dealing with it. You're starting to see it in how people talk, how they vote, how they push back in their own lives. There's this growing sense that the system isn't just broken. It's being run in a way that benefits a select group while everyone else gets squeezed. And when that realization sets in, people don't just shrug it off. They start rejecting it. They stop trusting what they're told. They stop playing along. And eventually they start demanding change, one way or another. So yeah, I think we're getting close. And when people are done playing nice, it doesn't come out polite. It comes out real.
Yeah. And that right there is where it starts to shift from frustration into something bigger. Because once people stop trusting what they're being told, they start looking for their own answers. And that's when things can go in a lot of different directions. Some people channel that into action, some people pull back completely, and some people start questioning everything. What's real? What's not? who's actually telling the truth. And when you've got a large group of people all reaching that point at the same time, that's when things can get unpredictable. And I'll say this, I don't think this kind of pressure just builds on its own. There are too many moving parts, too many decisions being made at different levels, and too many people feeling the exact same squeeze for it to just be coincidence. Whether it's policy, economics, or just the way things are being managed, something is clearly out of sync. And when systems stay out of sync for too long, they don't just correct themselves. They either get forced to change or they break under the weight of it. So, Daniel, let me bring you in because I know you've been looking at this from a bigger picture angle. Do you think what we're seeing right now is just the natural result of a struggling system? Or is there something more intentional behind the way all of this pressure is building at the same time?
I don't think this is random at all, and I don't think it's just the result of a struggling system. Systems don't just drift this far off course without patterns forming, and right now, there are too many patterns lining up at the same time. You've got economic pressure hitting from multiple angles, cultural tension increasing, trust in institutions declining, and information becoming more fragmented depending on where you look. When all of that starts happening together, it creates confusion. And confusion is one of the most effective ways to control a population without ever having to directly control them. Because when people are confused, they're divided. And when they're divided, they're easier to manage. And what's interesting is how consistent that pressure feels across different parts of life. It's not just one issue. It's everything stacking at once. Financial strain, social tension, conflicting information, shifting norms. It creates this environment where people are constantly reacting instead of stepping back and seeing the bigger picture. And I think that's where the real question is. Whether intentional or not, are we being pushed into a state where we're too distracted, too divided, and too exhausted to actually challenge what's happening? Because if that's the case, then the pressure people are feeling right now isn't just a side effect, it's part of the design.
All right. And that's where things start getting real interesting because, Daniel, what you're laying out, it makes people stop and think, no question. But it also raises another issue because when you start looking at everything through that kind of lens, it can go one of two ways. Either it helps people step back and see patterns, or it pushes people further into distrust, where everything starts to feel like it's controlled, manipulated, or intentional. And that's a dangerous place too, because if people start believing nothing is real or trustworthy, then where do you even go from there? And I think that's where this whole situation gets complicated because on one hand, you've got real pressure, people feeling it in their everyday lives, like we've been talking about. That part isn't up for debate. But on the other hand, how people interpret that pressure can vary wildly. Some see mismanagement, some see corruption, some see something bigger behind it all. And depending on which direction people go, that can either lead to solutions or it can lead to even more division and confusion layered on top of what's already there. So, Skylar, let me bring you in here because I know you're going to push back on this. Do you think what we're seeing is a system that's being intentionally manipulated, or is this more about complex problems, bad decisions, and people trying to oversimplify something that's actually way more complicated than it looks?
I think what we're seeing is real frustration, but I don't think it's some coordinated design or intentional pressure campaign the way it's being framed. Life is expensive right now. People are stressed, and there are absolutely decisions being made that have real consequences. But that doesn't automatically mean there's some bigger system pulling strings behind the scenes. A lot of what we're dealing with comes from overlapping issues: global economics, corporate pricing strategies, supply chains, policy decisions from multiple administrations. It's messy and it's complicated. And when things get complicated, people naturally look for a clear explanation, something that ties it all together. But sometimes there isn't one simple answer. And I also think we have to be careful about where that frustration gets directed, because it's easy to point at the system or those in charge, but there are a lot of factors at play, including corporations, consumer behavior, and even the way information spreads online. People are getting hit from all sides, and that's real. But if we turn that into this idea that everything is manipulated or controlled, it can actually make things worse. It can erode trust even further and make it harder to find real solutions. So, yeah, people are frustrated and they have every right to be. But I think the challenge is figuring out how to channel that frustration into something productive instead of letting it spiral into something that just adds more division.
Yeah. And that's exactly why this conversation matters, because you can hear it right there across all of you. Same pressure, completely different interpretations. And that's where things start to get complicated. Because no matter how you look at it, whether you think it's mismanagement, bad policy, corporate greed, or something more layered underneath it all, the one thing everyone seems to agree on is this: people are feeling it, not in theory, not in headlines, in real life. And I think that's the part that can't be ignored anymore, because when people feel like they're doing everything right and still falling behind, it changes how they see the system, it changes how they see leadership, and eventually, it changes how much patience they're willing to have. You can only tell people to wait it out or trust the process for so long before they start asking whether the process was ever working for them in the first place. And I don't think we're at the breaking point yet, but I do think we're getting close to a shift. Not necessarily something explosive, but something quieter, more personal. People making different choices, thinking differently, questioning more. And when enough people start doing that at the same time, it doesn't stay small for long. It turns into something bigger, something that can reshape how things move forward, whether anyone in charge is ready for it or not. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about frustration, it's about direction. It's about whether people feel like they have a future they can actually build, or if they feel like they're just trying to survive inside a system that keeps moving the goalposts. And that's a question a lot of people are starting to ask right now, whether anyone wants to admit it or not.
All right, before things get too heavy, let's take a quick second to talk about something that actually works for you and doesn't feel like it's draining your wallet at the same time. If you're out there grinding every day, putting in the hours, dealing with everything we've been talking about, then you already know the value of something simple, solid, and reliable. And that's exactly what we've got over at the Data and Dissonance merch store. From hoodies and tees that actually hold up, to coffee that gets you through those early mornings and long days, we've got options built for people who don't quit just because things get tough. Whether it's the High Lakes Light Roast to get you moving, the Rock Creek Medium for that steady push, or the Bitterroot Dark French Roast when you need that extra kick to power through, you're not just buying coffee, you're backing the grind. So if you want to support the show and grab something that actually fits the lifestyle we're talking about, check out the merch store. Links in the description.
You know, the more you sit with a conversation like this, the more you realize it's not just about money, politics, or headlines. It's about something deeper than that. It's about how people feel when they wake up every day and step into their lives. And right now, for a lot of Americans, that feeling isn't optimism. It's pressure. It's uncertainty. It's that constant question in the back of their mind. Am I actually getting ahead or just barely holding on? And when that becomes the norm instead of the exception, something starts to shift. Because people can handle hard times. History proves that. What people struggle with is feeling like the effort they're putting in doesn't matter. Like the rules keep changing, the goalposts keep moving, and no matter how hard they push, they're still being told they're the problem. That's where frustration turns into something more personal. That's where it stops being about numbers and starts being about dignity, about whether the system respects the people it's supposed to serve or just expects them to keep carrying the weight without asking questions. And I think that's where we are right now, not at a breaking point, but at a turning point. A moment where people are starting to look around and ask, is this really how it's supposed to be? And once that question starts spreading, it doesn't just go away, it grows. It evolves, it pushes people to think differently, act differently, and in some cases, demand something different. Not chaos, not destruction, but change. Real change that actually reflects the lives people are living every day. Because at the end of the day, the working class isn't asking for anything extreme. They're asking for fairness, for stability, for the ability to build something without feeling like it's constantly being pulled out from under them. And if that keeps getting ignored, then yeah, eventually people stop playing nice, not because they want to, but because they feel like they don't have another option. And that's the line nobody should want to cross. So wherever you stand on this, whether you agree with everything we said tonight or not, pay attention, not just to the headlines, not just to the politics, but to the people around you, because something is shifting. And the real question isn't if it's happening, it's what happens next. Remember to speak truth, stir thought.
Today's episode is brought to you by the creative world behind Data and Dissonance, starting with the Caleb Rourke thriller series, available now on Amazon. If you're into high-stakes action, government secrets, and a story that hits a little too close to reality, check out The Covenant Protocol, The Prophet Directive, and Black Echo Rising. It's a series built around tension, truth, and the kind of questions that don't always have comfortable answers. The same kind of conversations we're having here on the show. And the world doesn't stop with the books. If you're looking for something to listen to on those long drives, late nights, or early mornings, you can also check out the music tied to the Data and Dissonance universe. The album Uncaged brings that raw, grunge-inspired sound, built around struggle, survival, and pushing through the weight of real life. And if country's more your lane, Four Wheelers and Hallelujah delivers a mix of faith, freedom, and everyday American stories grounded in grit and resilience. You can find both albums on Spotify and all major streaming platforms. So whether you're reading, listening, or just looking for something real, check it out. All the links are in the description.